On this session, we're going to be working on building a front end. This is going to be a session very practical, very hands-on code. And we're going to be exploring a couple of libraries, and we're going to be actually using the latest version of those libraries, which probably you don't have, you won't find too much documentation about it. Let's start with the session, right? What we're going to be covering today, it's about first some fundamentals. So in this workshop, we're going to be talking a little bit about some requirements, some front-end libraries, the ones that we're going to be using on this session. And then we're going to jump to code. A little bit about me. I'm Nestor Bonilla. You can find me on Farcaster, X, all over the place as 0xNestor. Also, you can go 0xnestor.com and you can find my website. Now let's remember, before start on front-end portion, let's remember a little bit about the previous classes, right? On previous classes, actually on the last one, Robert did a great job explaining how, how we can compile, how we can create our first smart contracts with Cairo, and then we reach the compilation process. If you remember, when you create a smart contract with Cairo, at the end, when you do the compilation, you have three steps or three elements in those classes that you have in your project. You will have one file that will be called class. And then in that one, you will have three sections. You will have the code, you will have the class hash, and you will have the ABI. So for this session, we're going to be using a lot the ABI. Why? Because those that ABI contains the functions that are accessible from the smart contract, and you will need them together with, of course, the contract address. So I just created this visual representation to understand that you will have three components in that file contract class. Then let's talk a little bit about libraries. So there are many libraries in the Starknet ecosystem. And from my perspective, you can start from left to right, from more complex to more easy to use library. So on the left, we have Starknet Rust. So Starknet Rust, of course, you can create a front end with that. It's doable. It's going to be a little bit hard, maybe, but you can do it. You can use Starknet Rust for that. In the middle, we have Python with all these AI wave. Probably you know a little bit about Starknet Pi, and then you can use Starknet Pi in order to create your front-end applications. And on the right side, we have Starknet.js. So that's the library that we are going to be using for this session. Some caveat to mention is that Starknet.js did some major changes because they upgraded their version from version 5 to version 6. So there are major changes, but we are going to cover all of them on this session. So on top of Starknet.js, there are other libraries that you can use in order to create your hooks. And we're going to be explaining about that later today. Like Starknet-React, so Starknet-React is just to create hooks based on Starknet, on top of Starknet.js. And Starknet-Kit, it's basically a library that helps you to connect your wallets into your frontend. TLDR, that will be it. So any question so far? If not, we can jump to code.
So far, so good.
All right, awesome. So for coding, let's go to our repo. This is the repo that is getting some love. It has 18 forks, 16 stars. So I thought, I probably don't want to create another repo, but to create different branches. So you will see, let me increase a little bit the font. You will see here that for the previous session was Basecamp 9, and I did 4 branches. Well, 6, 5 of them from 0 to 4. And then on this one, you will see from BCX, Basecamp 10, from 0 to 6. Why did I decide to do it this way? Because let's say that you are going to be working today with the latest version of Starknet.js, Starknet, also React, and then you go online and you find some, documentation that relates to Starknet.js version 5. So at the moment you're like, okay, yeah, but what Nestor taught me today didn't work because I don't understand how it was before. So you can go back and forth here, and you can look at the differences between v5 and v6. And additionally, I added a couple of questions that were asked last session about balances and events on this repo. So without further ado, we can start by going to BCX0 getting started. So that's gonna be the here we're gonna start from the get-go with our project. So let's go to clone it first, right? Let's do the basic. So folks, on your end, you're gonna go and I hope well, this is a public repo, so it doesn't matter if you're logging in or not. So you're gonna do just git clone, and then you're gonna go here to the website. You're gonna go here. You're gonna click copy URL to clipboard, and you're gonna click on enter. Yeah, I have already that. So let me remove it. Starknet frontend. We're gonna start from scratch on this session. Okay, now let's do again the git clone. So on the git clone, we're gonna get the code. Then, as I like to try new things always, let's start with cursor. Right now, I'm using cursor. So folks, on this project, we will have at the root level, we will have a Foundry project. In this Foundry project, you will find one contract. So in this contract, we're gonna have first three functions: increase balance, get balance, and reset balance. Then on on we will need to use contract address and get call address. On the storage, we will have a balance, we will have an owner, and we will have one event. That's the one that we're going to be reading from the front end. It's called balance increase. So in balance increase, we have this event that will send three parameters. We'll send a sender, an amount, and a new balance. Then we have the constructor in order to set the initial owner of the contract, and we're gonna be setting the balance to 0. And now in the implementation of those functions, you're gonna be doing the increase balance. Then what I'm asserting here is that the amount cannot be 0. You calculate the new balance, and then you end in writing the balance. And finally, you emit that event, right? You're going to be sending the sender, the amount, and new balance. So remember that, because we're going to be looking at that in this session. Then a traditional get balance, then a reset balance. So on this one, it's particular because I added another assert that only if you deploy that smart contract, only you will be able to reset the balance. Okay, so that's a little bit about the contract that we will be using today. And then let's go now to the web portion. So let's go to web. And then here, the first thing that we need to do is to install the dependency. npm install, and that's gonna get all the dependencies from package.json. Let's talk a little bit about those dependencies. Here we will be covering, the traditional for Next.js, headless UI. So one thing probably that could be popular right now, it's ShotCN, but I didn't want it to include more, more components. I wanted to make it very simple for you folks to understand how all works. And then on top of that, you can add ChatCN and other fancy libraries for your front end. So we are using headless UI. We are using Lodash, Next, React DOM, and then related to Starknet, we have course Starknet.js, and we're using version 6.12.1. And for Starknet-React, we are using the 3.0. Bear in mind that we're using beta, so probably that's gonna change for a stable version in the next couple of weeks. But as I mentioned to you folks, we are using the latest libraries. So I hope that works. And what else? Now let's go to explain a little bit how is the start of the project. So in this Next.js project, we have in sources, of course, the APIs. So the API, it's API that come from when you compile and deploy your contract that is here. It's well, at the end you will have something like this. It's one API that is that's the object that it's exported from this file, and that's the one that we're gonna be using at our app. And then when you go to app, the first file that you need to see, it's the layout. So imagine that the layout, let me reduce this. Actually, let me just do npm from that. And then from there, let's minimize this. Okay, so remember always, at least in Next.js, the root layout, it's the portion of the code on your application that will wrap your whole application. So you can put here whatever you want. Usually in the Web3 ecosystem, you need to set the providers here. Or yeah, or create another component and then you call it here and then you wrap your whole application on that. So in Starknet, it's no different. What we're gonna be doing here, it's just wrapping the children, which means all the pages that you will create are going to be children, and then all of them you're going to be wrapping them with providers. So for providers, you can go to components. So usually you create another folder called components, and then in that folder you are going to be creating all your components. Let's go to providers, and then here we will see the export function providers. We will need to create a Starknet config. That's the thing. The Starknet config comes from Starknet-React. So as you might see, we are already starting to get on track with Starknet-React. So we need to set up our Starknet config. So we need a couple of parameters. We need the chains, provider, the connectors, and explorer. So let me go over them. So chains, you can use any chain. You can use Sepolia, you can use mainnet, or for example, if you are working with DevNet, you can do something like DevNet. And then you're gonna set that into your chain, right? In this case, we're gonna be using Sepolia. Then providers. So with providers, you can use your public provider, and you can do something like replace all this long line with this, and that will work. But bear in mind that, for example, in my case, yesterday I was trying with the public providers, and for some reason I was having some issues. So I don't know, a time of congestions. Probably the RPC endpoints are could have could experience some issues. So because of that, I would recommend you to use your own provider, or maybe not your own, but use other providers like Alchemy that are paid version, but you can start with free. So for that, you can do very customized approach, something like Alchemy provider. They have that here, Alchemy provider. The thing that I found is that if you do something like Alchemy provider here, let me remove this Alchemy provider, what you will need to pass is the API key. So what I saw is that it's probably they will be using the latest version of the RPC endpoint, but if you want to control that, you can go one level down and you can call an RPC provider. So with the RPC provider, you are going to be passing the node URL, and that node URL will have for sure that that version of the RPC. So let's go to Alchemy. And for example, I created this one. It doesn't matter if you folks. I know that I will expose the front end, the point, but it doesn't matter. I can.
Can you increase the page a little bit?
Yeah. Sure. Cool. You can go to Alchemy. This is the Alchemy page, and for example, you will go then for the apps, and then here you will click on endpoints, and then here you will have a list, for example, of all the RPCs that you can use. Of course, there are many RPC providers. You have Lava, you have Alchemy, you have others. So this is just one flavor. So you can go to click on Sepolia for the network, and then here you will be able to select which version of the RPC provider you want to choose. In this case, we're going to be using the last one, and let's go now to see on our project, I created an env template. So for that, you have many options. You can just replace it with local. You can copy and create a new file. It's up to you. And then here you will be placing your RPC URL. So now you have that next public RPC URL, and that's the one that you're going to be using, folks, here. Okay, change provider. Now let's talk about connector. So connectors are pretty much all the injected connectors that you will have on your browser. So that means Bravos, Argent, or if you, let's say, next after this Basecamp, you decide to do your a custom or a new connector, a new wallet, you can do it, and then you can start building this, and you will say something like custom wallet. Of course, you will need to have that object here, but you can do that, right? You can select your wallet here. At the moment, we have two, and then you can order them in a random way. So that means that it's gonna interchange from time to time, or you can do something like alphabetical. Yeah.
There's
Okay.
a question in the chat. The question is from Abdul. Where do we get the RPC URL from?
Sure. So for example, as I mentioned, it's just one example, one RPC provider. There are many. You can choose Lava, you can choose Alchemy, you can choose Impura. So in this case, I'm just using for example, Alchemy. So in Alchemy, you need to log in, right? You basically you just need to provide your email and all that. So once you do that, you can go to app, and then you can create a new app. Once you create a new app, you can go to the app, clicking on endpoints, for example, here, and you will go to Starknet. You can go to Sepolia, because if not, it's gonna fail because it will start to connect to Sepolia, but the RPC is on mainnet. So check this Sepolia, then copy, then go to your project, go to your .env. You need to create the .env.local. As I mentioned, you can just modify the name, or you can create another copy, and then you're gonna be placing next to next public RPC URL, that URL that you collected here.
I just mentioned them that they can choose like Voyager as well, or Blast API, whatever works for them as well.
Absolutely. There are many. So yeah, connectors. Now let's go to Explorer. So in Explorer, it's pretty much, let's say that we're gonna be, doing the transactions, and then we want to explore on with different Explorer. You have Voyager, you have star scan. For example, we can do something like star scan. Can. And then you can change, and you can say, hey, I want to use, I really like star scan, or I do like Voyager. So that's up to you to choose. So basically, those are the parameters to configure your Starnet config. And that's the first step. That's going to wrap your whole application. So let's go back to layout. So we already explained this. This is the wrapper. And then for every page that we load, it's going to preload first the root layout, right? That's the thing that I want you folks to understand. Then we have page. So page is the page that we're going to be using pretty much in all the session for today. Okay, cool. Now let's go to the web. Compiling. So this is the default page that we're going to be having. And let me explain now about the page. So in this page, there's only one component right now, which is wallet bar. Let me explain what does that mean. Let me go to wallet bar. Wallet bar is another component that I have where, well, in the components. So wallet bar, here we use Starknet-React, and we're going to be using here 3 hooks: use connect, use disconnect, and use account. What I use here is I get connect and the connectors. If you remember, connectors are coming from the providers. So connectors, and we have Argent and Bravos. So that's coming here, right in Wildbar. So we're getting the connectors, we're getting connect, disconnect, and address. So what I do here is just to say, okay, if there is an address connected from use account, then go over all the connectors that you define here, and you're gonna create a button. That button will contain an ID and a function call to connect to that connector. And we're gonna put the name of that connector. If not, if there's no address, then, sorry, if there is an address, you can get the address, we're gonna chunk it, and we're gonna add another button to say disconnect. That's it. It's pretty straightforward. And we can see here, it's gonna look for the providers that I do have here. Let me just remove these. Let me increase. No, I think we're good. 150. So every time that we connect, we're gonna be seeing connected, and then we're gonna be getting the address, we're gonna chunk it, and we're gonna put the disconnect button. So the next step is will be to read data. So let's say that we want to read data we want to read block data, for example. So for that, let me go here. We want to have one box that will show us this. We want to see read the blockchain title on a box, and then we want to read the current block. Okay, so for that, we can go to the documentation. We can start to look at the documentation for Starknet-React. So for that, we can go to Starknet-React. Let me increase the font. And you will see here all the hooks that we can use in our application. So as I mentioned before, we are going to be using Starknet.js v6, the last one. So that's why Starknet React changed to v3. And these are a couple of changes that you need to have in mind. Those are covered on the session. So in order to start to read blocks, we have two hooks. We have useBlock and we have useBlockNumber. In this case, we're going to be using useBlockNumber. So for that, we can start to do something like, let me see. Let's go to our code. So we can start to use a couple of hooks. So for that, we can start doing like use data. We're going to be using useBlockNumber. So useBlockNumber, we are going to import that. useBlockNumber will come from Starknet-React core. So here you will see what comes in useBlockNumber. If you want to look into the documentation, you can go to useBlockNumber. You can go to returns. So in returns, you know for sure that this hook returns this type of params: data, error, reset, status, is error, is pending, is success. Maybe you don't need all of them. Maybe you need them. It's up to you. It's up to how you are gonna be building your app, right? So in this case, I'm just gonna be going with data, block number data is loading, with block number is loading. So one thing that you might ask right now is like, why are you doing this? And the thing that I'm using this is because from every hook here, you will have the same parameters. Data, well, or similar parameters. Data is loading, is error. And imagine that you're gonna be using 10 hooks. At that moment, React is gonna tell you, hey, I don't know why are you talking about data. Are you referring to use block? Are you referring to use block number? Are you referring to use account, etc. Right? So that's why you need to rename it. So that's pretty much the step number one. And then another configuration that you can do with use block number, it's about the block identifier. So block identifier will allow you to set a block number or choose the last one. And let's say that on this one, I just want to use the last one. And because this is TypeScript, it's going to say, hey, what's going on with latest? I was expecting a number, but you can use latest as block number, and block number will come from Starknet. Let me see. Yeah, from Starknet, and I need to import that, and it's block identifier, sorry. And we're good. So let me explain you a little bit about this. It's expecting block identifier, and now why it's passing. It's because it's a type block number, and block number could be a number or could be a block tag. And the block tag could be pending or latest type. It's an enum. Okay, so that's why it's passing.
There's a question. We don't need to
Sure.
switch branch to read data one?
If you want to follow with me, you can start from 0 and we can, start iterating on that. If you folks get stuck on any part, you can just move to where we will be talking about, let's say branch 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. It's up to you, folks. Then we're going to be getting the data, and we're going to be getting let's create one workshop ends, and we're going to be putting here one number. So for that, we can go to, oh, I forgot to add this one. Let's add Voyager here. So here we can see the blocks, right? So in the blocks, you will see the blocks that are being mined. So for example, you can do the calculation, if a block is mined every 1 minute or 2 minutes. So you can do the calculation and say something like, this is, where we're starting. And let's say that, let's say 1 block per minute. You can do the calculation later. That's going to be around 120 minutes. So that's going to be around 5:52. That's where the workshop gonna end, and we are gonna be using that into our front end. So in order to conclude and use that block number into our app, let me go forward with this. We can use something like this. We can say, okay, if there is not a block number loading, and if there is not an error, then I want to render this section that it's gonna come with block number. Block number is coming from this hook. And in addition, I added 2 things. Let's say that now you want to modify your UX based on data from the blockchain. So in this case, that's what I do, and say, if the block number it's below when the workshop is gonna end, so that means that we are live in the workshop. If not, well, that's mean that the workshop ends. So I changed the color and I changed some text. Okay, so let's see that in action. So it seems that we are live in the workshop. So that will be the first. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you. That will be the first block section. Straight from the blockchain, you get the block number and you do, that calculation. Cool. Any questions? If not, we are going to be jumping to the next branch. Next branch, it's going to be read balance. So in read balance, what we want is, we connected the wallet, but we don't know what's the balance of that account that we just connected. So we want to show that. So for that, let me show you what we want. What we want is something like this. We want something like a box that will get the symbol and some balance. That's it. That's what we want. So for that, let's go now here. We can add a comment. Then we're going to go to branch 2, add a comment. And then what we want to do, it's first, we want to get the address that is connected. And if you remember, when we were explaining wallet bar, we use what? We use account in order to get the address. That's pretty much what we're going to be using right now. We're going to be getting the address from use account. So in order to be clear, we can rename it to user address. And then the hook that we want to use is use account. That's going to come again from Starknet-React core. Okay, we have that. And then finally, we are going to be using another hook. So that next hook is useBalance. We're going to be saying const is loading, and then balance is loading, blah, 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 and then useBalance. useBalance, and of course, we need to pass the address. So which address? Well, the one that we just defined before, the address, and that's going to be user address. If we go, for example, very simple, actually, you can just remove this, and of course you can remove this, and at that moment you know the address is going to be the address, or there is no name, there's no need for rename it. Or of course you can do address equal address, but it, you know, you can reduce that. But in this case we want to be crystal clear, so that's why we do this. Use balance, it's going to come from the hook. Every time that you do that, you will see that a new hook is going to be added here. So it's going to be balance is loading, balance is errors, data. I think we are good to go. Okay, this is going to be all the data that we need in order to show on this portion. And for that, let me explain a little bit. Now, once this hooks loads, which is first the address, and then if the address loads, we're going to be using use wallet, and then we are going to be passing the address, and we're going to be getting if it's loading, if it has an error, and if not, if everything went well. So we were having a balanced data. So that's the thing that we're going to be using here. We're going to be saying, I do want to render this section. If the balance is not loading, it means it complete either with error or not. And then we add another condition. There's no error on this use of the hook. And if there is an address. Why? Because it doesn't make sense to show a card where you know there's no address connected. If all of them agree, then we will show that section, and what will comes in that section will get the balance, the symbol on the data that we're going to be having, and then we're going to be getting the balance data, and we can get the formatted version to it, and we can fix that to, let's say, 4 decimals. So that's pretty much it. Let's say, well, if you see, I just save it and there's no change. Why? Because there's no connection, right? If we connect the wallet, now we will see the balance of this wallet. Now you may ask yourself, hey, you know, why it's saying ETH? Why is not saying Starknet? STR key. You can go to the documentation and you can go to use, what was the name? Use balance. Okay, use balance. And then you can see here, there's one section that you put either Starknet, or you can pass actually the address, the token. So let's say that you want to, you have some USDC into that balance, and you want to show how many, you know, USDC a user have on that address. So you can do that here. You can pass the address, and then you will have that that balance. So that's it with branch 2, folks. So let's go to the next branch then. The next branch, it's read contract. Now, at this point, we want to read data from the blockchain, right? So for that, let's go back here and let's show again what do I mean by reading data from the blockchain. Like, what do I want to show? Okay, let's go here. This is what I want to show. I want to show this contract balance, where we're gonna be, you know, just reading the balance of the contract, and we're gonna be using a refresh button. We're gonna explain that. So for that, let me go first here. So on step number 3, or branch number 3, what we will be using is first a contract address. So we need to get the contract address. If you clone your repo, you can you can deploy your own instance of the smart contract. In this case, we're going to be using one that I already deployed before. So let's use that one. Let me go here. We're going to be using this address. This is the contract address, right? That's one instance of the contract that I just deployed, which is that one that we explained before on lib.cairo on the root of the project. And then we will need to read the data. So in the new version of Starknet JS version 6, that also made some changes in the Starknet-React. This is the new way that you need to use to read data. Again, we're gonna get the data as well. Let's call it read data. Let's just use that start, and then that's gonna be use read contract. That's what's the change. Before it was called useContractRead. Now it's just read contract. And we will need to pass a couple of parameters. We will need to pass the function that we want to call. So let's say function name. In this case, it's going to be called getBalance. We need to pass the arguments. In this case, we don't have any arguments. We need to pass the ABI. We have the API here, right? As I explained here. So we are going to get the API, and that's going to come from ABIs/API. Okay. And finally, we have some other options like watch true. So that means that every block you're going to be, the hook is going to be fetching the data. And also we have another, which is refresh interval. So that means that every X milliseconds, the app will get data from the blockchain. So we see one error here. And the thing is that, again, we are working with TypeScript. So it is expecting something different than this. Maybe it's coming from Starknet. Cool. To mention again, with the contract address, then we're going to be using use read contract. We're going to be passing the parameter. We're going to be passing the arguments, the ABI. We're going to be doing the reference of the ABI, and then the next other parameters are up to you. So just to be clear, let me just verify the function name. If we go to the contract, we can go for that function name, the function signature, and we can see here there's no parameter. So that's it. We are good. And then once we have that, on step number 3, we can go back to the render portion, and we can say something like this. We are going to be using the read data that we just got, because that's going to be the balance. And then one additional thing that I wanted to add is the data refresh. Let's say that by some reason the front end doesn't fetch every 10,000 milliseconds or every 1 second, every 2 seconds, and so on and so forth. Let's say that for some reason that doesn't work. You have the option to do a manual refetch. That's gonna call again that hook. So that's what I wanted to create here. For that, there is one parameter that I need here in the read. Okay, in the read we have refetch, and then you can rename it to data refetch. And then I think that's it. The other parameters, I added a few others. Those were optional. So far with this, it will work. So right now we have the balance. We have the connection with the wallet. We know if the workshop is live, and then we know if there's a balance in our account, the account that is connected by default. I missed one portion here, which is the address, because before I wasn't passing the address. Now we get the number. So, okay, right now we have the balance of 3. If you want to verify, you can go to the contract, then you can go to Explorer, you can go to, well, verify that you are in Sepolia, go for the contract. Then in the contract, you will see read storage. Then in read storage, you can do all that step here, basically. Read contract, sorry, get balance, query. That's it. 3. Okay, Cool. Folks, so we already cover how to connect, how to read data from the blocks, how to read data from a contract. Now what we are going to be doing is to change the status of smart contract on the blockchain. Now for that, let's go back to, we're going to be using something like branch 4. So in this section, we want to show something like this. We're going to have one section where we're going to have one simple input where we're going to set the value, click send, and then that's going to pop up the wallet. And if that passes, then we are going to be showing the transaction link. So that should redirect us to Sepolia on an Explorer in order to see the details of that transaction. So what we need to do now is first we need to create a couple of variables. We need to use amount. Let's say that we want to create a hook, but that's just React, right? That's not related to the Starknet. An amount and a set amount, and that's going to be a use state where we're going to be passing different values. We can say, hey, you know, this use state could be a number or could be or could be empty. Okay, we are creating a hook for amount. Then we want to handle the submit, and that should be basically one assign function, because why that should be assigned, because we are going to be sending that information to the chain, and then we're going to be reading for different change status. So that's going to be an event, react.form event, and that's going to be of type HTML form element. So that's pretty much very standard for a form. And then here we will say, first, we will need to prevent the default. So that means that if we don't do that, for example, every time that we click the button that will trigger that form action, it could re-render the page, and we don't want that. We want to prevent that default behavior. And after that, we are gonna be calling other thing. So let's remove that, and we can say something like, yeah, we can console log that, and here is the thing that we want to call, to do. And with that, we will again get the contract. For that, we can pass the contract. We're gonna be using the use contract. Instead of, if you see before, we were using use read contract. So that's only for functions that are not gonna intended to change the status, just to read the status. In this one, in order to change the status, we need to do 2 steps. The first step is just to use contract. So for that, we need to import it. We need to pass the address and the ABI. So the contract address, we already defined that somewhere, yeah, here. And then we need to pass a type ABI in this case. So you see 2 flavors here of doing things. So once we have the contract, the next step is to elaborate the calls. So for that, we can do something like calls. For this, we're going to be using another hook from React that is called useMemo. Okay, so here we will be saying, let's remove this. Yeah, let's remove this. Let's close this. So what we're going to be doing here, it's first, we are going to be saying, okay, if there's no user address, so if there's no connection to the user address, or there is no contract, let's return 0. So what does that mean? Is that on this section, we are elaborating all the calls that we're going to be doing to the chain through the wallet. And if there's no user address connected, so what are we going to be doing? Nothing, right? Because if we pass that, that could throw us an error. So we don't want that. Then we want to elaborate safe, something like safe amount, and that will be something like amount or 0, for example. So that means that we will always be passing some value, not undefined or null or whatever, nothing like that. We always going to be passing some value. Then the other one, it's going to be the return. And then the return, it's going to be the contract, if I can write contract, then populate. So this is the thing. In this new version of Starknet-React, now we need to create the contract, and now we need to populate. So in populate is where we are going to be saying, hey, I want you to call first this function increase balance, and we're going to be passing out the parameters. So the parameters is going to be safe amount. Let's say that you have more parameters later, and you can pass them. So imagine that you have I don't know, a number that you want to increase, and then an additional address. So you can say, let's say, use address, for example, and you can, create an array of params. So that's it. After that, we can create conditionals, and then that's going to be contract user address and amount. So what does that mean? Oh, sorry, an increase balance needs to be as string. So what does that mean? It means that, let me remove this. It means that the calls are going to be re-rendered every time that one of these three elements changes. If the contract changes, well, we need to repopulate the transaction. If the user address changes, well, we need to repopulate that. If the amount changes, we need to repopulate that. So that's pretty much what we're doing here. Any questions so far here? If not, then the next step is just to do the call. And then that's going to be use send transaction. Okay. And then what we are going to be passing here, it's going to be the calls. So that's it. Use send transaction, and we're going to be passing the call. So TLDR, we first get the contract, we create an object of the contract, we create the calls, and then with the calls, you can create a use send transaction, and we're going to pass those calls. And here we will have different things. We could have send, we can call it like write async, for example. That's how I prefer to name it usually, because it's very clear, like, okay, you're going to do this here, an async call. Then you can use data, which is the data that it will return. You can call it write data is pending. You can use write is pending. Then to conclude, we can use another hook. So that other hook, it's called use transaction receipt. So it's so many steps. Bear with me. So in transaction receipt, what it's expecting here, it's expecting a hash. So the hash, where that's come from, that's going to come from the write data. And if it's some value, then it's going to come with a transaction hash. And do you want to keep looking at that receipt? Yes, I do want to do that. So we can add what's true. And then what's going to come here, it's going to be, again, data. If you see, folks, there are so many renamings, but you need to do it. If not, it's gonna fail, right? If I just use data for everything, you are gonna be very confused. So that's why the extra wording. So that's gonna be here, 8 data. We can add status, something like wait status is loading, something like wait is loading. What else? I think that we're good with that. You can have more things, and as I told you before, it's like you can see the different returns that every hooks has, and you can see, hey, I do want to get the is error, or if there's an error, I want to understand what that comes in. So you can do that, but in this case, we're good with that. Then another thing that I wanted to show, well, right now it's just about the buttons. I'm going to place them. So this is all the part that was related to Starnet. And then this is just a couple of functions that will make the UX more appealing. Loading state. So loading state, it's just an SVG doing an animation with a message. So it's not Starnet stuff. And then button content, it's gonna get all the different status, and depending on those status, it's gonna get the loading state, which is this function that will show, just one SVG animation and then one particular message. That's it. One missing part of all that is that, okay, now let's go back to handle submit. So in handle submit, we say, okay, we want to prevent the defaults, and now we set a to do. So that to do, it's to call what? What we need to do is just call write async. That's it. After, when we're going to be clicking here, we're going to be calling write async, and that's going to be calling the use transaction that comes with the calls, and that comes that use the contract that we define. That's pretty much it. And after that, we're going to be setting a hook in order to hear what is going on. Cool. Any questions so far? If not, we can go to...
There are two questions. So
Tell
the
me.
first question is from Salvador, and the question is, to create a dApp on Starknet, would you recommend using pure Starknet-React or a toolkit such as Starknet Scaffold?
That's a good question. And probably if we have enough time, we're going to be covering a little bit of that. So I would say that use the tool. Starknet Scaffold is a great one. I would say it's a little bit more advanced. So for Basecamp, for example, it's like I could go directly to Scaffold Starknet and explain you folks that. But at some point, I could lose a few of you folks, and I do just want to explain you, like, hey, this is how it works. This is how you use the hooks. And then from this basic understanding, you can create your own custom hooks. So for example, in Starknet Scaffold, they create custom hooks based on the hooks from Starknet-React. So it's a composability. So I would say first understand the foundation, and then after that, go wild. Okay, cool. We are half an hour to end. So let me move forward. So we are in 4, right? So let me just put what that will look like. The form that will look like this. Let me just change a little bit here. We missed one additional, which is handle amount change. I just put it here. It's one form that has an unsubmit. The unsubmit function, it's the one that I explained before. Here, we will have one input. That input will be amount, which is the hook that we defined before, the one that will start with 0, at least, always, in order to prevent any error. And then onChange. OnChange, it's going to call handle amount. This is another pretty much React. That's why I didn't explain this one. Basic React. It's going to set the amount when you type a new value. Let me go back. And then we will have one button. The button will be the button content. What does that mean? That means that if we go to button content, based on the variables and the value of those variables that we define, like, for example, if the write is pending. What do you mean by is pending? It's because we send the transaction and it was sent to the blockchain. So right now it's pending because it needs to be confirmed and so on and so forth, right? So that's what I'm talking, like, based on all these variables that we defined before, we're gonna put a different message on the button content. And then on the final portion, it's this one. If there is a write data, if we have a transaction hash, we're gonna render this link. This link will have a Sepolia link to Voyager, and then it will come with a transaction hash. So why did I do this? It's because I mean, if we don't have a transaction hash, why do we want to render a link, right? There's no transaction, so it's gonna be just Sepolia Voyager online tx slash null or something. Right? So that's why I did this condition, and now let me just render of what we did today with transactions. So let's first connect to our wallet. Then let's say, oh, there are people using the contract. If you see right now, I started with 3 and now it's 57. Cool. So let's increase this. And we're going to be getting the pop-up, and we're going to be signing increase balance. We're going to be calling increase balance, and we're going to sign transaction. That's it. And if you see, that's pretty much what we did with the button. It's like, depending on the state of the transaction, we're going to be placing a different text. Cool. We have written on the blockchain. If we want to check the transaction, we can click here, and we will see here that it was a minute ago. We changed the status, and the amount was 1. Cool. All right, cool. So folks, that we're almost there. We have just 2 more things. 2 more things. The next one, it's going to be reset the balance. So I'm just going to put this. Let's say that you want to, so for example, right now it's in 57. I really love, folks, that you are interacting with that contract. So right now 57, 58, and so on and so forth. But let's say that you want to reset that to 0, but you want only you as a contract owner to do that. Right? So because of that, let me go here. That's going to be here, branch 5. And here, what are we going to be doing? If you remember, we're going to be using, again, another use memo. So that's going to be called reset balance call. And for that, we're going to be using use memo with no initial parameters. And here, we're going to be using, pretty much it's similar, but it's not the same. It's like, okay, if there's no contract, then we're going to be returning null. Why? Because like, what are we going to be resetting, right? If there's a contract. And what is contract? Contract, we already defined that here, right? Cool. Then we're going to do a try catch. In that try catch, we're going to be saying return contract.populate. And what are we going to be calling? We're going to be calling reset balance. So just to double check, we can go to the contract, we can go to the function reset balance, it will here. Okay, it has no parameter. Cool, that's it. And then if there's a error, we're gonna catch in here, and we're gonna say something like console log error. Boom, that's it. And if that happens, then we're gonna return undefined. Boom, that's it. That's how we create a call, right? Now, we need to basically send the transaction now. Let me put the conditions. So this reset balance calls will change. We'll repopulate this if only and if the contract change. It's not like the other one, because we were depending on other parameters. This one is just if the contract change, then we need to repopulate that. Then we need to do, again, send, we could call it like reset balance, and then we can know it is spending, reset is spending. We can do something like data. That's the data that we're going to be getting, and that's, we're going to call it reset data. Cool. Then that's going to be use send transaction. And as before, we're going to be passing the calls. And if there's a call, we're going to pass it. If not, it's going to be 0. Why we're doing this is because before we were doing another approach, but this one is another flavor. And that's it. That's it. We already set this. Let me go now to show you how that will look on step number 5. Let's go to our local host. Okay, now we have that. We have the button of reset balance. So for example, in this case, yeah, I deployed this yesterday with other account. So if I click here, it should throw an error. If you see, well, I cannot increase the font of the what? Oh yeah, I can. Oh, cool. So if you see here, this is an expected error. It said execution fail reason, only owner can reset balance. You see? I didn't deploy with this account, so I cannot modify that. And if we want just to double check, we can see here on reset balance, we are running this. And that's exactly the error that we're seeing on screen. And that's not going to allow it to pass. So if you try it with the same account, that you created the instance of your smart contract, it will pass. Okay. So that's it. Then last step. I remember last time folks were asking about, hey, that's cool. We already read the blogs, the contract, we write the contract, but what about events? What about if I do want to check those on my front end? So I added a new branch on that here. Let me go to get events. So for get events, let me show you first how I do want to show that. Okay, this is how I want to show it. Something like small table, right? Where I'm gonna be having the sender, any numbers were added and the new balance. That's it. And that correlates with, if you see 3 parameters, you can go back here and you can go on the emit of the event. It's 3 parameters. Those 3 parameters are the one that I define here in balance increase, and that's the one, the ones that I want to show. Cool. Now let's go to start working on the last portion. So for that, we are gonna be here. So in branch 6, we're gonna be doing something like. So there's a couple of things here. I explore a few things with getting the provider from Starknet config, which will be the logic way to do it. But I don't know why. Maybe they will do some updates to the wallet that I couldn't make it work. It didn't comes with a get events functions that we're gonna be checking later. So the way I do it is use memo. This is just a React, use memo, and we're gonna be creating a new RPC provider. Again, we're going to be passing just the node URL, and then the node URL will be, instead of this one that is by default, we're going to be using the one that we have in process.env.next public URL. With this, you can create a new provider. I want to set, an array of those events, and then that's going to be another use state and the type. It's going to be contract event, and that's going to be an array. Here I'm defining the type, and then we will start from empty. Now you may ask yourself, hey, but what do you mean by contract event? That's the only type that I created here in this repo. So it's a type that will contain a from address, keys, and data. That's for events. Bear with me, you will see why. Then the last one will be const last checked block ref. We need to have a reference for that, and we will be using useRef0, and we need to import, because we have not used so far ref in this project. Then the next step will be to get the data. So the data, it's going to come from block number. First, we need to get the block number. For that, we're going to be using useBlockNumber, and we're going to have just a refetch interval. It could be 1 second, for example. Let's go with 1 second. This is the thing that, for example, if you do it with a public RPC provider, it probably gonna fail, because it's gonna say, hey, there are so many requests being done right now. So, but if you use a custom one, then that's probably not gonna fail. So let's go now to check for events, and then we are gonna be doing use callback. First, we're gonna import callback. Okay, cool. Let me explain to you what I did here. So in check for events, we're gonna be using use callback, and then we are gonna be passing a contract and a current block number. And we're going to be saying, okay, if the current block number is below or equal to the last check block reference, that's why we created a ref. We're not going to do nothing. If not, then we're going to do this. And then here, it's where we are going to be getting from the provider the events. which one's the one that we need to pass the address, the from block, and the to block, and then yeah, a chunk size. So, but basically, you need to focus onto this: a from, to, address, and then with that, the provider will get those events. So that's what I mentioned before. I tried just to get the provider from Starknet for Starknet config, and for some reason the get events was not there. But yeah, a work around that is just to create your own RPC provider in order to get those events. And then once you have those events, you can set them into the the variable set events. Then you're going to be doing that, and then you're going to be, of course, updating your last check block reference, which is the reference that you created here that start with 0. So you do that, and if you catch an error, yeah, you console log that, and then this is going to be changing every time that your provider changes, right? Which is not common. Then you're gonna be using a use effect. That use effect is for you to say, hey, if the contract and block number exists, check for events. So for example, if I remove the contract, it won't check for events because there's nothing to check. Like, okay, are you gonna be checking for events? Okay, which contract? So if those are the two, you are gonna check for events. Check for events will be calling all these, and then at the end you will have an array of those events. That's going to be depending on contract, block number, and check for events. And then finally, the end, I just created another memo just to get the last 5, because we want to show just the last 5. Let's say that right now you folks have interacted a lot with the contract, so I can imagine there's going to be a bunch of those events. So that's pretty much it related to Starknet-React. And now we want to modify the table that we just defined, right? Just which table? This one. Right? We want to modify this to get those events. So let's go here to the table. Let's replace that with this. Yeah. And now we will see that we will get the length of those events. So I'm showing how many events are related to the contract so far. Then the 3 columns, and they're added and new balance. And you see here a shortened address, which is not there, but it was there since the get-go in libs utils. So here is just a helper, a couple of helper functions. So for example, if you want to shorten your address, you can use this. If you want to format the amount, because what you will get from events is going to be hexadecimal. So you want to show the decimal representation of it. So because of that, we're just going to import that. From where? From libutils. That's it. And then finally, let's see if that works. Oh, there's something here. If we remove this, it works. And then we add this. Okay, cool. We have 7 events, and we are going to be showing, oh, this guy added a bunch of numbers. Okay, cool. So that's it, folks. We have the sender here. 3 people have interacted so far lately, right? We have 7 events, and we have the added number, and then we have the new balance here. Before, let's say we were at 3 before, then we added 54. The F335 added 54. That the end result was 57. Then EE3 added 1. Then it was 58, and so on and so forth. That's it, folks. I hope you learned a lot. It was a lot of things, I know, but everything is on the repo. If you want to compare the different version of Starknet v5 and v6, you can compare with the different branches, and probably that this repo is going to keep evolving with next Basecamp editions. And then the idea is, for you to when you start to work on your front end portion, you say, hey, I know there's a great repo that use Starknet.js v5, but they lately added v6, and then in the next edition maybe v6.2 or something like that, and I want to understand those changes. So you can go here. So That's it. I would love to know if you have any additional questions. If not, we can go to
There are
Scaffold
actually two
chart.
questions, if
Okay,
I
let's
can
go.
ask them. The first question is from Michael. I think you were talking about the request at one point. So this is the only way to get event from the BC side. Do you need to check with request every time? No options like long pooling or something like this to receive events?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably they will come with some uh, 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 probably there is another approach. This is an approach that I wanted to show. Like it's kind of very succinct, very quick to do it. Then related with get events with from the providers, probably I guess the folks from Starknet-React are gonna be doing some changes to the library. And actually, if you go to and what npm npm package, and you go for, let's say, the package, let's say this one, you will see that basically we went wild here because right now well, wow, maybe yesterday night they published the version 3, but before it was 2.9 something, and I decided to use the beta version. This is starting the ecosystem. It's very evolving, new things every day. But yeah, we made it work, folks. Probably they're gonna be adding some changes to improve the get events. But yeah, probably for next edition we're gonna be using a more robust approach.
And we have another question from Idris. I believe the question is, so it doesn't have background in HTML, CSS, JS, and all of them is looking like magic. But he knows Flutter. Is there a way to transcribe all of this to Flutter to use on mobile? Or would you just suggest to learn front-end and React?
Yeah, I mean, this is an open source project, right? So you can, for example, if you're already very focused into those libraries, probably you can find some other folks that could join you, and you can start, for example, Starknet React or something particular for that library that you were referring to, or you can learn React, Next.js, and that type of stuff. So it's up to you. This is an open community, and it's a very welcoming community. So every change that you do or every proposal that you do, it could be well received. Honestly. Any other
Great. And there's
questions?
another question. If you can do the same thing with Python SDK, I believe yes.
Yeah, for sure. You can do that. That will be, of course, another session, right? Yeah, because yeah, I've been thinking a lot. Like, okay, this is keep evolving, right? But at some point, maybe we need to split the front end session into two. Maybe one like started front end session, and then a more advanced, like this other question, like, hey, I want to create a very customized approach to get the events, and then set up my whole side platform just to get that, or maybe some more advanced. Folks, any additional question, please remember, I'm gonna be keeping updating this. You can follow me on all the social media and all that. If you have any question, happy to respond any question. So I think that's all, Robert. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I think it was a great session. Maybe do you want to show something with this Stark scaffold, or
Oh
you
yeah,
already
sure, we can
mentioned?
do that. So for example, if you very quickly, folks, well, I have 3 minutes, so let me go wild with this. So for example,
Speed run.
you are like, okay, I already understand everything that Nestor explained today. Now I want to go the next step. So for that, let's say, I want to create a repo, npx start npx create start latest. That's gonna use the latest version. Then if you don't have installed that package, it's gonna ask you. That's it. And then let's say that uh, Basecamp Basecamp 10 uh, demo. That's the project that's the name of the project. Then we're gonna be using Starknet native. Then we're gonna be using, yes, I do want to install the packages right now. So right now it's gonna go and create a new project, BCX demo. It's gonna uh, create and gonna be doing the clone of a specific folders, and then it's gonna be installing. So let me go a cursor, bcx demo. Cool. Let me go here. And then we will see packages. This is a mono repo. So pretty much mono repos are repos that has multiple repos. So you will see something like in the package.json, you will see the two packages. It could be mono repos will have many, many, many repos. That's not recommendable, but yeah, you can do it. So first things, if we do the yarn, you will see that they're already installed because we did that before. And then you will see a couple of scripts. So those scripts could be chain, compile, deploy, reset. And those are the ones related with Foundry. Okay, so how does that work? This is kind of a drill system where you have here the chain or the deploy, and that will mean that inside the package of SM Foundry, you will find another package JSON, and here we will have another chain. So it's a drilling approach. So first we will start something like jar chain. So that will start your chain with DevNet. In the workshop that we did today, we didn't use DevNet because I wanted for you to folks interact with that smart contract. And if I do it with, my local chain, that's not going to be possible. Okay, so with jar chain, you're going to start your chain, and then we will need to create another terminal. So in that another terminal, we can, for example, create that smart contract that they have here, libcairo, and then that's going to be calling to this contract. It's going to be your contract. Let's do something like jar deploy. That's going to deploy on DevNet that contract that we have. That should work. Did I? npm run compile. Let's see if this compile. So for this, if we are using DevNet, we need to have at least two terminals. One where the local chain is running, and then the other one where we're gonna be deploying. So let me check again. That should be it. npm run deploy. Yeah, now it works. It works with npm. Okay, cool. So with this, what we did was to create our local chain. Then we compile our smart contract, the one that is by default here, and then we deploy that. So that's all deploy on local chain. Now let's go here. Let's create another one, and let's do an npm run start. That's what's going to be doing. That's going to be doing package JSON. Let's go to start. Then start is going to be calling to the Next.js project. That's here's going to be another package JSON, and here we will see it start, and that's basically a next start, which is a Next.js project. Boom. Then if we go back to localhost, we do a refresh. Right now it's compiling, and then we have this project. So in this project, you will see that you can connect with different wallets. You can connect here with burner wallets, which are the wallets that are with DevNet. So for example, if I go here, 9691, that means that if I go to my DevNet, that should be the first one. You see, this is the first one that is connected. I'm connected here, and then when I click on the bug contract, you will have, for example, your contract. The different contracts deployed are here. So here in this project by default, they deploy ETH and Starknet token. Those two ERC20 are by default deployed by DevNet, and then every additional contract that you deploy is going to be a new tab. So in this new tab, you will have all the read, the write, and all pretty much the function and how you can interact with that. The particular thing is that now that you understand the basics, the foundation, you can go here in this project and understand how it works. Let's say that you're going to go to app, and then you're going to go to layout. Then in layout, again, you will see here app providers. Do you remember that? We already configured that in our application. So you can go here. You can see hey, I kind of understand this because we work with Starnet config, right? Again, they changed the provider, the connector, the explorer, pretty much. That's what I did before, and then the particular thing, just to conclude, is that here you will find all the hooks and the components that these folks created under component scaffold start, and then you will find here a bunch of components. So for example, for balance, they create custom components based on Starknet-React. You see? So that's pretty much it. It's like first, you will need to understand the foundation, understand Starknet.js, Starknet-React. Then on top of that, you can create your custom platform. Then if you want to go another level of abstraction, you can use these other hooks from this great project that are abstracting another level more and more. Let me know if you have any question related to that, and happy coding.
Thank you, Nasser, for speed running us through Starknet Scaffold. It's a great project, and yeah, thank you for this wonderful session. And I hope you guys enjoy Basecamp X.
Thank you so much, folks. Thank you. Or see you on chain, I'll say.
On chain. See you on chain.